The Word and the World, Episode 1, Balanced Literacy versus the Science of Reading. Part 1, The Reading Wars Reignited. For over a century, American classrooms have been caught in what we now call the reading wars, battles over how to best teach children to read. On one side, you have balanced literacy, a meaning-first philosophy that took root in the late 20th century. Its core idea is that students learn to read the way they learn to talk, through authentic, meaningful exposure to language. Reading workshops, just write books, and student choice were meant to build a love of reading. On the other side is what's now branded as the science of reading, a term describing more than 50 years of interdisciplinary research, from linguistics, cognitive psychology, and neuroscience, on how reading develops. It emphasizes structured literacy, explicit, systematic instruction in phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. In New York City, this debate has moved from philosophy to policy. The NYC Reads initiative now requires every elementary school to adopt one of 3 Science of Reading aligned curricula, officially closing the chapter on balanced literacy's 2-decade dominance. What's really at stake isn't just curriculum, it's our very definition of what it means to read. Part 2, Balanced Literacy, Meaning, Motivation, and Missed Opportunities. Balanced literacy emerged as a middle ground between whole language and phonics drills. Its most famous architect, Lucy Calkins of Teachers College, designed classrooms where children read real books, write every day, and discuss meaning. Teachers served as coaches, not lecturers. For many educators, this approach felt humane and joyful, especially compared to the rigid, test-driven instruction of the No Child Left Behind era. But joy alone hasn't been enough. Critics argue that balanced literacy undertaught the code of written language. Students were told to use picture power or context clues rather than decoding letter-sound relationships. For struggling readers and multilingual learners, that approach often meant guessing instead of reading. National assessments showed little progress in reading proficiency, and investigative reporting amplified frustration. Many teachers began to realize that balanced often meant uneven, dependent on individual skill and school resources. Still, balanced literacy reminded us that reading isn't just about decoding. It's about wanting to read, and that's something worth preserving. Part 3, The Science of Reading, Research, Reform, and Resistance. The science of reading claims to correct the gaps in balanced literacy by grounding instruction in decades of empirical research. Neuroscientists like Stanislas Dehaene and psychologists like Linnea Eyre have shown how the brain learns to connect sounds to print, how reading must be taught, not discovered. When applied well, science of reading aligned programs strengthen decoding, fluency, and vocabulary, especially for early and struggling readers. The approach also recenters teacher knowledge about how literacy develops. But the science of reading is not a single method or curriculum, it's a body of evidence, not a product. Yet in the marketplace, that nuance often gets lost. Commercial publishers now sell science of reading approved programs, and state mandates risk flattening diverse research into one-size-fits-all solutions. As literacy scholar P. David Pearson warns, science is provisional, it evolves. Treating it as settled science risks replacing one dogma with another. Teachers' pushback isn't resistance to evidence, it's frustration with being told that professional judgment doesn't count. Part 4, Systems, not just strategies. Both balanced literacy and the science of reading tend to focus on what happens inside the classroom, but reading outcomes are shaped by what happens outside it too. Socioeconomic inequality, access to books, housing insecurity, and linguistic diversity all shape literacy development. You can teach decoding perfectly, but if a child's world doesn't give them stories worth decoding, comprehension will still falter. That's where the current science of reading movement often falls short. It diagnoses classroom practices, but not the social conditions that make them fragile. As educator P.L. Thomas argues, the reading crisis narrative often blames teachers while ignoring poverty and policy. So while the science of reading gives us powerful insights into how reading works, it offers fewer answers for why literacy gaps persist. No curriculum, no matter how research-based, can substitute for systemic support, smaller classes, and equitable funding. Part 5, Moving Forward, a multifaceted model. So where does that leave us? Balanced literacy gives us empathy and agency. The science of reading gives us structure and clarity. Both contain truth, and both fall short when treated as orthodoxy. A future-ready literacy model must be multifaceted, explicit in its teaching of the code, but equally committed to comprehension, motivation, and cultural relevance. It must view teachers not as technicians following scripts, but as researchers in practice, capable of adapting science to the students in front of them. As schools across New York transition to science of reading aligned curricula, change will be uncomfortable. There will be retraining, frustration, and growing pains. But change doesn't have to mean compliance, it can mean growth. Embrace the research, question the branding, and advocate for the realities in your classroom. Because the real science of reading isn't found in a textbook or a law, It's found in the daily, evolving practice of teaching real children to make meaning from words. And remember, literacy isn't a war, it's a conversation.